So, hello everybody. So I have a couple of housekeeping issues too. So the first one is that today, and I have to give a disclaimer because I'm an attorney, but the information I'm going to talk about today is just for informational purposes. It is not legal advice in no way. And if you have legal questions that you need legal advice, I'm going to recommend that you talk to an attorney that has experience and some expertise in the area of no-fault law. With that said, I'm pretty confident I probably can answer a lot of your questions. The other housekeeping matter is that, Chris, if I go over time, make sure you kick me under the table, okay?
Okay.
To shut up, because when Lou talks about her stuff, I think what she has to offer today is going to be extremely important to all you folks. She's been in the business for a long time. She's been in the trenches, and I think that she's going to have some great information for you guys when you start making decisions on what option you're going to elect under the new No-Fault Insurance Act. So a little bit about myself. I've been in the business as far as an attorney for the last 26 years. Prior to coming to carrier law, I was in the trenches suing automobile insurance companies, representing injured people. I think I'm pretty confident in knowing and understanding Michigan's no-fault law as it existed prior to the new law. With the new law, all the attorneys that do this type of work, just like the insurance adjusters and agents, they're all getting up to speed and kind of re-educating themselves on the new law. The goal for today is going to be, and from my perspective, is going to be pretty superficial. I'm going to just give you the highlights, the big changes that have occurred with the No-Fault Act. And then Lou is going to get into the meat and potatoes about the different options that are available under the No-Fault Act and what the agents are dealing with as we speak. So just as an overview, before the new no-fault law took place, the old no-fault law was essentially one size fits all. What I mean by that is that under the No-Fault Act, regardless of who was at fault, your automobile insurance company would take care of your allowable medical expenses, wage loss benefits for the first 3 years, and some other benefits such as replacement services. So it was a one-shoe-fits-all approach. With that said, if you were injured in an automobile accident, you had the best medical coverage under the sun. You could go to any expert, you could go to any doctor, and your automobile insurance policy would pick up that charge. It would, the only caveat is that it would have to be related to the auto accident. So you couldn't go to your primary care doctor and you had a sore throat and you wanted that to be covered under the No-Fault Act. That would not happen. But if your injuries were related to an automobile accident, essentially you had the best health insurance imaginable. And so what was happening over the years as the No-Fault Act took hold and grew, well, the insurance industry, in my opinion, was really taking it on the chin because they're all of a sudden responsible for paying these outrageous medical bills, that we all get hit with. I mean, if you ever look at a hospital bill, it's just crazy. But the way it was presented, I think, to the public was, and this is just my point of view, but what was happening especially in the Detroit area, is the auto insurance rates were going out of the roof. And so what the result was is that people were driving around uninsured because they just couldn't afford the auto insurance. And so our legislatures got together, and again, the big proponent of this change was the insurance industry. And so, as you know, when the insurance industry is lobbying our legislatures, the middle working class is going to take it on the chin. And in my opinion, and I'm just kind of going off the cuff a little bit off the path, but I think that we're going to be taking it on the chin when this thing settles down. But in any event, prior to the new act, one shoe fit, everybody, regardless of who was fault, your auto insurance carrier would take care of you as far as your allowable expenses. Those are medical expenses and then some other miscellaneous stuff. Under the No-Fault Act or your policy, this is referred to as personal injury protection, or the abbreviation is PIP, P-I-P. So when you talk to your agent, and I'm encouraging everybody here to go and talk to their agent about which plan fits them best, you have to talk to them about PIP. They'll know exactly what you are talking about. So with the new law, what has happened is that now the auto insurance industry has options for us. What I mean by that, and it's an opt-in approach. So what I'm saying is that everybody still has their traditional no-fault coverage. And if you look at your insurance policy, if you want to reduce your premium, you have the opportunity to reduce your PIP, personal injury protection coverage, okay? And there's a couple of programs out there. You can reduce it to $250,000. You can reduce it to $500,000. If you're on Medicaid, you can reduce it up to $50,000. If you're on Medicare, you actually can opt out and not even be charged for no-fault benefits. But there's a lot of caveats and conditions that make that happen. So as we, again, it's an opt-out policy. So I'm sure all of you have received letters from your agents, and if you haven't, you should. And what they are asking you to do is to contact them to see whether or not you want to continue with the traditional no-fault coverage, or if you want to jump into a plan that fits your needs and your budget. So when this whole new fault law started to be circulated, I'm Dutch, okay? I can squeeze the copper off of a penny. And I was extremely happy that this is going to result in savings in my back pocket. And that essentially how it's been presented to, the residents of the state of Michigan, is that overall this is going to be a good fit for everybody because it's going to reduce their insurance premiums. And as I've gotten into this new law and reviewing it, my, I guess, optimism that this was going to be a good thing has faded, okay? And and Lou's going to talk about, I think she and I are on the same page about our concerns. But again, it's given us the opportunity to select a personal injury protection package that fits our needs and our budget. The overall goal of this, I think from the legislature's perspective, is that, it'll be affordable for people. More people will be buying insurance policies. Therefore, there's going to be less uninsured drivers out there on the roads, which is a good thing for everybody. But on the flip side, if you really get into the nuts and bolts and the weeds of this law, it can be a boomerang and come back and hit us on the liability aspect of it. And so and I'm kind of skipping around a little bit, but so under the no-fault law, there's both the PIP, again, personal injury protection, and then there's the bodily injury protection. Those are the two big, I guess, coverages that we all have in our auto insurance policies. So where we go from here, from my perspective, is how can we best protect ourselves, okay? The first thing that we should all be doing is we should be reaching out to our agent like Lou, and we should be having a very candid conversation with our agent as to what best fits our needs. You should not be blinded by the dollar savings, okay? Our needs in insurance is to protect ourselves and protect our family and protect our stuff, all right? The cost of the insurance policy should be kind of last on the list when we're evaluating whether or not this is a good fit for us. The other thing that we should all be doing is we should be looking at our estate planning documents. And this is not a sell from carrier law, this is just my personal perspective, is that we have to take measures on our own to protect our stuff. Whether or not that's in a protection trust, whether or not that's buying an umbrella policy through our auto insurance carrier, we have to take the affirmative stance that we have to look out for ourselves and protect our stuff. So again, I'm Dutch. I get the savings of $1. Like I said, I squeeze the copper off of a penny every day. My wife says that I'm cheap. No, I'm frugal. But, in reality, I'm cheap. But I'm not going to let that drive me as far as to how I'm going to protect myself and protect my family. So again, you really have to have a candid, upfront conversation with your agent about what is the best fit for you. And my closing comments are this. So with the new No-Fault Act, it's like a snow globe, okay? And what our legislature has done with the No-Fault Act is they've given that a big shake. And all the snowflakes are flying around. There's a lot of uncertainty out there. There's a lot of uncertainty as to whether or not people are going to opt for the lower policies. There's uncertainty as to whether or not more people will be insured. There's uncertainty as to the terms and the the terminology in the act and how the courts are going to interpret that. Okay, so it's a snow globe. All the snowflakes are flying around like now, right now. And when it settles, will be the true indicator if this law is good for Michigan residents or it's bad. My opinion, again, it's skewed somewhat because I looked at who was behind pushing this through Lansing. And whenever the insurance company is behind a bill, I'm concerned. Okay, are they looking out for our interests? And if anybody raises their hands, okay, they got to wake up. So the insurance company, in my opinion, they're looking out for their interests. And I think it's been sold to the American or the Michigan residents in that there's some good things in this. And I agree with you. There's some good things in this new law. But I think there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of ambiguity. And that causes me to stay up at night and worry about things. So talk to your agent, candid conversation, look at other things that you can do on your end, protection trust, umbrella policies. Take the necessary steps to protect yourself and protect your family. So I'm going to turn it over to Lou, and Lou's going to get into some of the nuts and bolts of the PIP coverage and the different options that are available to you.
Okay, thank you, Greg.
Yeah.
My name is Lou Paletta. I am a fully licensed agent here in Michigan. The company I represent is VantagePointe Risk Management. However, we are in essence a broker, and we have 40 different auto and homeowners insurance companies that we do represent. So I have no particular company such as State Farm or AAA or Citizens that I am representing. This is just from a 10,000 foot level of what the new law says. So I thought first what I do is get a little bit into why they did a reform, okay? For the last 45 years, the personal injury protection, and it's called PIP, and I'm going to call it PIP from now on, has been unlimited in the state of Michigan. So what that means is that if you were injured in an auto accident, the amount of money that you could recover is unlimited. However, the new law was designed to reduce the rates because our rates were very, very high, okay? And the new law took effect July 2nd, 2020, and you can choose the amount of coverage from unlimited to even opting out. And as Greg said, that may not be such a good idea. I thought I'd get into the history first. No fault, under a no fault system, it says it doesn't matter who's at fault, okay? You are responsible for your own, okay? And the courts prior to this law were flooded with auto-related suits. This is where the term ambulance chaser came to be, because these scrupulous agents would actually sit and when somebody was injured in an accident, said that they would help them, okay? And the problem is the insurance premiums rates grew even higher to these increased lawsuits and rising medical treatment costs. So in 2018, Michigan auto insurance was very cost prohibitive. Matter of fact, we were the 4th highest in the US. And we also were very highly ranked for the number of uninsured drivers, with 20% having none. So in May of 2019, the legislature voted to reform it, which regulated the current PIP premiums and fee schedules. Okay, so under PIP, drivers are no longer required to purchase unlimited no-fault PIP and can instead choose their coverage. And in a minute, we'll talk about what is a qualified driver, okay? There are 6 PIP medical options, and if you do not choose a limit, you will default to unlimited, okay? And just keeping in mind that for most people, an estimated of $500,000 of PIP medical coverage per person will cover about 99% of claims. Now there's a second part too, which is called bodily injury. So the PIP is for you, but bodily injury is if you cover someone, if you hit someone else, okay? And so the limits increase to about $40,000 per accident, okay, with a default minimum of $250. So if you look at your current auto insurance bill, the front page is something called a deck page. And you will see on your deck page things like this, 250/500. And that will show what the bodily injury coverage is. So what does that mean? That means, let's say that there's a car accident, okay, and there are 3 people in the car that you hit, and all 3 are injured, okay? The maximum that all 3 of those could recover would be $500,000, with the maximum to any one individual as $250,000. So one person might be able to collect $250, but the other 2 people would have to collect a combined $250. Okay. The other thing is that the rating prohibitions went away. So it's no longer gender, marital status, home ownership, education, zip code. Let's face it, people who lived in the Detroit area, in the Lansing area, a little bit here in Grand Rapids, by your zip code, if you were in a high population area or a high crime area, no longer can you pay an increased premium due to that. Okay, so basically what is included in PIP? And it covers your medical bills and any lost wages, only up to about 60%. So keep that in mind, 60% of lost wages when you and or your passengers are injured. Okay, and it'll cover reasonable charges for medical expenses, such as going to the doctor, hospitalization, surgeries, and MRI, physical therapy. Maybe if you are injured, you have to do a vehicle modification, which allows you to drive the vehicle, or even if you have to make the vehicle wheelchair accessible. It would cover any home modifications, including bathrooms, accessibility, elevators, ramps, if you have to have a handhold in your bathroom, okay, it would cover that. Medical mileage, a reimbursement for transportation costs. I bet you didn't know that your insurance will cover if you have to drive seeking medical treatment. So if you're here in Grand Rapids and you have to go to U of M for medical treatment, it'll be covered there. Okay. Funeral expenses, it'll pay up to $5,000 in funeral expenses. Survivor benefits, pay up to $5,000 for your survivors. Work loss, up to 85%. And then replacement services, okay, $20 per day of expenses incurred. So here are your 6 choices that you have to make. And again, I would really advise that you talk with your insurance agent. If you don't have one, I have a staff of 6 here that they would be more than happy to talk with you about your options, and everybody will talk with you free of charge. So there's no obligation to do that. So let's start at the top, unlimited PIP. There's no change at what you do. $500,000 of PIP benefits, $250. $50,000, excuse me, for those who are enrolled in Medicaid, Medicare opt-out, and then qualified health coverage exclusions. And we're going to talk about each of these separately. So the first one is unlimited, okay? And it covers any costs that are not covered by your health insurance, including rehab and attendant care. This is especially important if somebody is on Medicare, because as you know, Medicare doesn't cover long-term care. So let's say, for example, heaven forbid, somebody has a teenager, okay, on their policy, or maybe a young child, okay? If they're injured, you know, that you reduce your premium, this unlimited will cover them for the rest of their life. Number 2 is where you limit your personal coverage to either $500,000 or to $250. Okay, again, I would say in most cases, 500,000 would be sufficient. However, the premium cost isn't that much different. Okay, it lowers the limits for less expensive premium plans, but again, it will cover rehab and attendant care. Okay, and as you can see down at the bottom, it says requires either a 20% for the 500,000 or a 35% rate reduction over the next 8 years, meaning the insurance companies, if you decide on those, has to reduce your premium by that much. What if you have a qualifying health plan? So what is a qualifying health plan? That would be if you have a plan that is with your employer, not one that is separate, such as you have through the health marketplace. You can what's called coordinate those coverages so that your health insurance plan will pay after, your health insurance plan will pay first and then your auto insurance plan. You really have to watch on that, and again, check with your agent and check with your qualifying health insurance plan to make sure that they are covered. It's very important that you check all the fine boxes. Okay. Now, if you have Medicaid, somebody is covered under Medicaid, they can reduce down to $50,000 worth of coverage. Okay, and it gives you very limited costs, but again, it will cover, very limited services, very limited reimbursement. Okay, you may find yourself having to be responsible for some of these costs yourselves. Okay, but again, check with the company, check with Medicaid on this. And then what if you have no coverage at all? Now, how can you do this? You can do this if you're on Medicare Part A and Part B. Okay, and each of these we'll cover in a minute. They will cover you through qualified health plans. Okay, and if you decide you're on Medicaid and you talk with your health insurance agent and you talk with your auto insurance agent and you can get good coordination of efforts, then you could pay no premium and you could get 100% of your rate reduction. There's another thing too that you have to determine, which is called the order of priority. Who is covered under a no-fault claim? Obviously, yourself, your resident spouse, your resident relative, but relatives who do not reside in the household are only covered in a particular way. Okay, so for example, in my household, my 88-year-old mother lives with me. She no longer drives, but I have her on our auto policy to make sure she is covered. If you have young children in the household, even if they do not drive, you should have them on your policy. Okay? Now, what if your children are going at school? Okay? So if you have a college student and they are driving your car, again, check with your agent. They may or may not be covered. But if somebody is driving a car that you own, and let's say they live in Chicago or they live in Lansing, they really should have their own policy, okay, and have them listed on their own policy, even if they are driving a car that you own. Okay, who is not covered? Anyone not a resident, a legal relative. So if you have a fiance or a roommate, okay, who do not have their own insurance but drives a vehicle titled in your name, they are not covered. Again, we just talked about this. Children who have their own residency but do not live there. So, you know, right now, children who are 26 and under can still be covered under their parents' health insurance. So if you have a case like that where you have a a 25-year-old who is just getting started in life and maybe living in Chicago, getting started, and you're covering them under their health insurance, that's fine, but you cannot still keep them on your auto insurance, even if they are driving your car, okay, because they do not live in your household. Okay, so here's sort of the new order of PIP. You know, you should have your own insurance, who's covered, and how it's covered. Okay, and it's covered in, if you look at each one, it's got the occupant of the auto, occupant of an auto for hire. Maybe you're an employer's auto. So maybe you drive a car that is owned by your employer. Maybe you drive a truck or a van, or maybe you drive delivering things for them. Okay. If you have a motorcycle, we're going to talk about that. Okay. How are they going to be covered? And what happens if you hit a pedestrian? Okay, so these are all things that are very important when PIP insurance comes into play. Okay. So what is a qualified health plan? Okay, there are two main types of qualified health coverage. One is Medicare Part A or B, and the other is health coverage that does not exclude limits. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. So let's first talk about Medicare. Okay, if you have Medicare, you can opt out of PIP and Medicare will cover you. Okay, you can choose either a 500, so that's number one, you can opt out. You also can choose either a 500 or 250 worth, and Medicare will pay for those services once PIP is exhausted. And you still have to pay your premiums, your deductibles, and your co-pays and any services Medicare does not cover. Couple of caveats. One of them is that the maximum that it will pay is 2.5 times your Medicare coverage, which your overall coverage that you're entitled to is $100,000, which means if you opt out completely, the maximum they will cover is $250,000 worth of injuries. Okay, and anything Medicare does not cover, such as long-term care or stays in a nursing home, will not be covered if you eliminate or reduce your PIP. Okay, there is something called the Michigan Catastrophic Claims Association. Okay, and this is just another one of these things, another fees that are added on. Just think about your cable bill or your phone bill, and you get all these local fees that are added in there. Okay, and the insurance companies are going to be reimbursed. Okay, and the assessment rate is $100 per year for you. So that's an extra fee that's charged in if you select the unlimited, or $0 if you select the other options. Okay, and the whole idea of this catastrophic claims is for those people who do not have coverage, okay, or to provide unlimited lifetime coverage for those that result in auto accidents. Another thing that we have is something called mini-tort reform. So what is a tort? Tort is a civil wrong, okay, and it's also if your car has been damaged by another vehicle. You can collect a portion of that damage back from the insurance company. Think of it as your deductible. So last fall, a lady slid on the ice and hit my car. Nobody was injured except the cars. Okay, and so I had a $1,000 deductible, and I was able to recover that from the insurance company, which paid for my deductible. That has now increased to $3,000. Okay, and you also can help use this mini tort to help pay for these, as I said, for repair costs. If you're a self-funded group, so this is if you have a health insurance from someplace else, you have the same options. So let's say, for example, you're with a company like Ford or GM. Okay, those options are still out there as to who pays the primary coverage, who pays secondary, and goes from there. Unlikely impact currently, because primary will take care of that. Also, these groups could see potentially increase in auto claims depending on the limits. So be very, very careful. Again, this is a case where you really should consult with your agents or consult with your human resources. And you should have already received letters from qualified health coverage letters from your employers. How about the motorcycle insurance? We've had a lot of questions for that, and I know that Greg has related to me that their firm has had that. The new no-fault law has not changed the source of no-fault benefits. So whether you are the operator or the rider in a motorcycle accident, you'll continue to first seek no-fault benefits from the insurer of the motor vehicle involved. Okay, and then the insurer of the vehicle's operator. And the benefits now will be based on the no-fault limits chosen. So if you're hit by a car that has took the $50,000 limit, okay, that's all you would possibly be able to recover. And it no longer matters what motorcycle insurance coverage the motorcyclist may personally already have available. It's based here on this no fault. Okay. Okay, after the injuries, you continue to turn to motor vehicle insurer. And then you would go through this Michigan assigned claims plan. Okay, and that's the one that I told you at the beginning that if you select the unlimited, it's $100 extra. And the mandatory minimum limits now for the motorcycle's liability coverage increases to $50,000 and $100,000. And again, just to reiterate, if there's no source of benefits, then to be subject to the $250,000 limit. Okay. And it's a big deal because often the motorcycle accidents resolve some of the worst injuries, including brain and spinal cord, especially because Michigan, there's no requirement for you to wear a helmet. And I do have a client who's a young guy, he's only 32 years old and was hit by a car, did not have a helmet, and now he faces a lifetime of injury and a lifetime of rehabilitation. Okay, so your options. One thing that I would like to mention here is review your options and talk with an accredited agent. Don't be penny wise and pound foolish. Okay, we are suggesting that you choose the unlimited PIP. Okay, or maybe select the higher bodily injury limit, maybe $250,000, $500,000. Perhaps you would consider purchasing an umbrella policy. Just think of what an umbrella does. It protects you during the rain, okay, or protects you from the sun. It's a little extra protection so that if you were injured, if you do cause injury, if somebody is hit by your car, they don't have to sue you personally. The policy would take care of that. Another thing I'd like to mention is that if you have a coordinated benefit with your personal health insurance, so if you're still covered under a GM plan or a Ford plan or a Steelcase plan, something like that, the law says it can only be coordinated if your coverage, if your premium is $6,000 or less. You need to check on that. If you are under a marketplace plan, you do not have a coordinated plan because the average marketplace deductible is $8,150. per person, which is well above the $6,000 limit. So again, it would behoove you to check with your agent, okay? Again, if you don't have an agent, we will be happy to talk with you. Contact experts who only deal in auto and home insurance, okay? They're not gonna try to sell you life insurance. They're not gonna try to sell you investment plans. They're not gonna try to sell you that. Talk with an expert who only deals with home and auto, okay? And so here's our number. We'll be glad to talk with you. And I'd like to open it up for questions that maybe Greg and I could answer any questions. Or if you can't think of one now, you can always contact Chris at Carrier Law, and she could forward the questions on to us.
So hey, Chris, before we open it up, I just have a few comments on what we had to say.
Okay.
And so the first comment I have is on these qualified health insurance plans that are really key to the options that you may be eligible for. You have to review the policy to make sure there is not an exclusion regarding automobile accidents, okay? That will not be a qualified health plan. So a lot of these health insurance policies have exclusions that they will not cover medical expenses if it involves a motor vehicle accident, all right? That is going to be on that's your responsibility to review the plan. Another comment I had is that if you elect a lower policy, all right, for instance, if I have elected, if somebody has elected a $250,000 policy, okay, that's the cap, and I cause the accident, and their medical bills are $400,000, their medical bills alone, the PIP insurance is going to cover the first $250,000 of that. And then they're coming after me for the balance of that. Okay, that's economic damages. I was at fault. I could be potentially on the hook for that. And so that causes me a lot of concern when I'm up at night, saying just because of somebody else's election of a lower policy for PIP benefits, I could be on the hook if I cause an accident for the difference of that. Okay, that's why you have to really double check with your agent regarding the bodily injury protection and consider protection trust or an umbrella insurance policy to protect your stuff. Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
There was one question, Lou, that you stated that if someone is on Medicare, they would not need PIP.
No, it's not that they would not need PIP, it's that they could opt out of PIP, okay, for themselves. But let's take somebody who is 65 years old and opts out of PIP, all right? And let's say that they are injured in an auto accident, which, let's say it's a back problem, okay? They could live another 30 years with back problems, and they will only pay up to $250,000. And in 30 years, think about what healthcare costs are. You probably will go through that $250,000, probably a lot of it in the first few years. But again, if it's 30 years and you have to have, a wheelchair ramp put in or things like that, it probably would not be a good idea to opt out of it. But you do have that option that they will do that. However, just keep in mind, if you do opt out of it, the maximum that they will pay is 2.5 times Medicare, which is Medicare max is $100,000, so they'll pay maximum of $250,000. And after that, you're out of luck. You have to come up with it on your own.
Does anyone have any questions?
I do.
Yeah, this is Ray.
Oh.
Can you make the auto insurance as a primary and then Medicare and anything else as a secondary?
No, Medicare is going to be primary.
Yeah.
And then if you have no fault like PIP coverage, then PIP will kick in the balance. If you don't have PIP and you've exhausted the Medicare limit, you're on your own.
Okay.
Good question.
Can we get a copy of
Question.
the slides?
Sure, I'll send them over to Chris.
Thanks.
Oh, thank you.
I have
Yeah,
a
this is-
question.
Yeah, this is Ray.
Hi, Ray.
In the past, when I was employed, the employer required that the auto insurance be primary and then their insurance would be secondary. Is that still true today?
Again, you would have to check with the Human Resources Department to see how that works. It differs
well-
by different companies.
Yeah, well, in the past, the company I worked for said that the auto insurance had to be primary carrier and then anything else, they would become secondary.
Yeah, you'd have to check with them.
And so if I may, when I was, back in the day, when I was litigating no-fault benefits and medical expenses, what you had happen with coordinated policies is both insurance companies are pointing the finger at each other, okay? And what's happening on your end? The bill is not getting paid. The doctor is not getting paid. The doctor gets upset that he's not getting paid, and what does the doctor do? The doctor sues you. While these two insurance companies are pointing the finger at each other. That was the biggest problem with coordinated policies, okay? Nobody's willing to step up to the plate and be primary. I mean, eventually the dust settles and everybody gets paid, but you, as the care person needing the care, could care less who pays it. They just wanted to get paid, so you get the treatment, right? So that was my biggest problem I had with coordinated policies. And then you're hiring me to go in to fight the insurance companies. And that's taking more money away from your end of the day pocket. And so if, in my opinion, if you can, again, if you want to save the penny, okay. And you get coordinated coverage, okay. But you're setting up potential conflict between both the first party automobile insurance company and the traditional healthcare policy. They're going to be pointing the fingers at each other.
Linda?
Couple of things, Chris, there's a question here saying, if I'm on Medicare and opt out and have a serious accident and later go into a nursing home and become eligible for Medicaid, will Medicaid cover me? Yes, but up to a limit of about $50,000. Okay, so again, don't be penny wise and pound foolish. You know, it really does not seem to make sense. The other one says that if someone is on Medicare, they would not need PIP. However, auto is primary. Again, you would need to check with that. Medicare does not cover long-term care. Okay? Medicare, if you have to go into a nursing home, the maximum they cover is 120 days. And that's only after you would have an accident or an operation. So let's say that you had and let's say you had knee replacement surgery and you're on Medicare, and you went directly from the hospital to skilled nursing, they would cover that. But if you decide you're going to go home and then you try to go into a nursing home a week later because it didn't work out at home, they would not cover it. And that is not considered long-term care. So be very, very careful about what they cover and what not.
And then, and as a side note, this is another issue regarding the opt-out with Medicare. And if you got your son living in the basement, okay, and if your son doesn't have a qualified health plan, which he probably doesn't, because that's why he's living in your basement, right? But if he doesn't have that qualified health plan and you have a resident relative in your basement, that's a contingent factor, the opt-out, all right, and the opt-out of PIP. And so And your son may have, starting out, your son may have the healthcare coverage, but then if he loses it, you've opted out and you've never informed your agent that you need to switch this thing, that's going to create problems for you.
Here's another question. Would you cover again, what happens if I have an accident and the other person has no insurance or a limited PIP? Yes. So if you have an accident, you are responsible under the no-fault law. You are responsible for your own injuries. So what you select is what you will be covered for under your insurance company. And then if the other person has a limited PIP, you only could try to recover from them after you've exhausted yours for a limited amount of money. So don't confuse the difference with PIP, which is personal injury protection, which is you, versus BI, bodily injury, which is if you cover someone else, okay? So you want to protect, as Greg says, you want to protect you want to protect your assets, your family, and you want to do your PIP to be the best for you.
And then if I could just add one other comment. So if that person is uninsured, you have no recourse against that person other than to go after, you know, the shovels and the couch and the brooms and the rakes. But you have no recourse to go after that individual for any additional PIP medical expenses that you incur that go beyond your cap, whether it's $250,000 or $500,000. And that driver's uninsured, so you have nowhere to turn to try to recoup your loss on that.
Here's a question. If my son or other friend not living with me is driving my car, we're assuming with your permission, or is a passenger in my car, is it PIP or BI? It is BI. Okay. Only the named people are covered under personal injury. Okay, which would be, in this case, it's you and your spouse or a relative that lives with you, which is why I said, you know, my mother is 88. She hasn't driven in years, but she is on my policy because she is a named person on my policy. So if we would be involved in an accident and she would be injured, she would be covered.
So kids need to make sure they have kids.
But if your son who lives in Detroit is covered, they'd have to have their own policy.
Hello, this is Don.
Hey,
If
Don.
I opt for unlimited PIP, a bodily injury level of 250 and 500, what is the reason that I should have the umbrella plan?
So they cannot sue you personally or take your assets, okay? If you have an umbrella coverage, it's a little bit more. So let's take the worst case scenario. Let's say that you take the 250 bodily injury, all right? And let's say, unfortunately, it is a young child, maybe a 10-year-old who is injured, okay? That 10-year-old probably in their lifetime will go through $250,000 very quickly. And you know, they would have to have lifetime of care. Then after that $250,000 is exhausted, then that attorney can come back and try to sue you for personal assets. That's why if you have an umbrella policy, it's just a little bit extra protection. I will tell you, I have an umbrella policy for both of the cars in my household, and I pay about $100 a year for both of those for just an extra $250,000 worth of coverage.
So if I can just add to that, so if I can add to that, so if I'm Sam Bernstein, all right, and I collect $250,000 from you, but my client has $1 million damage lawsuit against you, I'm coming after you. I'm coming after your house. I'm coming after your bank accounts. I'm coming after your wages. I'm coming after what your Ferrari that you have in the car. I'm coming after everything because I want to recover as much as I can for my client. Obviously, if you don't have anything, Sam Bernstein is not going to be wasting his time going after your stuff. But if you do have stuff, he's coming after that, all right? And he's got a judgment in his hand. He says, I'm entitled, my client's entitled to $1 million. I have collected 250 from your auto insurance. I'm coming after you for everything. You know, the balance of that. And here's my judgment. So tell me where the money is. And I'm kind of, you know, inflating a little bit, but that's where you need that umbrella. You need to have, or a protection trust. That's where you need to have your stuff protected.
It seems to me that with the new plan, if we follow your advice on all of these 3 points, it's more expensive to us individually for insurance fees than the old plan.
It could be.
Welcome to government.
Yes.
It could be. No.
Crooks.
Yeah, it is designed to be less expensive, but you know, this thing is only 21 days in the making. It just has not shaken out yet. We really don't know how many people are going to opt out and what is that, how is that going to affect the coverage? Because, you know, just to give you 100,000 mile definition, insurance is done on something called the rule of law numbers. So the more people that are insured, then the better the rates. If you have less people insured, then the rates are going to become higher. So it just depends on how many people take whatever level of coverage that there is.
And I will add this, that the new law, it puts more risk on our shoulders, okay? That's the bottom line. It puts more risk on our shoulders. And when there's less risk on the insurance company's shoulders, it's less expensive for the insurance company.
Here's a question. When does the new law become effective? It was effective July 2nd, 2020. So it's been in effect for 3 weeks now.
So it really became effective in June of 2019. It's been a gradual implementation of different provisions of the law. This PIP coverage that we have just been talking about, that has been implemented in July, just came into fruition as far as implementation. There's other implementations that are going to occur further down the road, but this implementation is the big one. This is where we have to make decisions on our coverage. And so the other stuff is just incremental to different changes in the law that occurred.
Question, does the opt-out extend to Medicare Advantage plans? Yes. So because you have, it's only if you have A and B, and to have the Medicare Advantage plan, you have to subscribe to A and B. So yes, it does opt out if you have an Advantage plan. But keep in mind, you still got to pay your premium. You still have to pay the $147 a month or whatever it is to Medicare every month, your Part B premium. You still have to pay the $198 a year one-time deductible. You still have to pay anything that is associated with Medicare. So you can opt out of the, if you choose, you could opt out of the PIP for your auto insurance, but you still, and for Medicare, but you still have to pay everything that's associated with Medicare.
There's another question there as well. How are grandchildren not living with me, but with their parents are covered if they're riding in the grandparents' car?
Okay. So it's an issue of priority. So it's going to fall on first their parents. And correct me if I'm wrong, Lou, but the statute has a order of priority that you have to work your way down through. Okay. So the first order of priority is going to be their parents' auto carrier.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up that slide if you'll hold on a second.
Yeah.
So if I'm at work and I want lunch and my fellow worker doesn't have their car with them and they use my car and they get in an accident, am I liable?
Well, you raised two issues. One for PIP, okay, personal injury protection, is going to fall on their auto insurance carrier first, okay? Now, if it's for bodily injury, if that employee, is looking in their ashtray, counting the pennies like I typically do when I'm driving down the road, but if that employee is at fault, all right, not only is the driver on the hook, but the owner of the car is on the hook for liability purposes, okay? That's the pain and suffering, that's, all the aches and pains and the belly aches and any excess allowable PIP benefits. So again, but if you're just talking strictly PIP, Chris, it's going to fall on that employee's auto insurance carrier first. It's an order of priority that you have to go
So
through.
here's the slide for order of priority. So let's cover that example first. If you are the borrower of the car, all right, so it'll be your insurance first,
Oh,
okay, and then the assigned claims plan, okay. If you have your grandchildren with you, okay, then it is their policy and then yours, okay. But again, look, see where it says resident relative, and that is just the key change. They have to be a resident relative. So if they are with you in the car, that's why I say put your mom or dad on there if they live with you. Put your minor children, if they don't drive, put them on there too. Then they are a resident relative and will be covered here under your PIP first.
Interesting. Does anyone have any other questions?
I've got a quick one.
Go ahead, Bill.
If you have a non-resident relative that borrows your car, say they're in the shop and they need to take yours to work or whatever, and they get into an accident, what am I liable for?
It will go against their insurance first, okay? Then if the injuries have been, if the cost of the injuries have been exhausted after then you could be liable.
And would that come, if it's injuries to him, would that fall under PIP or would that fall under BI?
That's under BI.
So the PIP only applies to the people who are actually named on the policy.
That is correct.
Okay. So if I don't change my BI at all, and I've got a friend riding with me and we get into a car accident, my injuries would be covered under the PIP. His injuries would be covered under the BI.
Yes.
Okay, great.
I have one question.
Go ahead, Joe.
You mentioned that July 1st was the effective date of these changes. I was under the understanding by something that I read and what my agent said is we as insured don't have to make the elections until the first renewal after July 1st of this year. Which is correct.
That's correct. So
That is
if you have a
correct.
if you have a policy in place, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lou, but if you have a policy in place right now, it hasn't been renewed, then you have up until the renewal period to make that election.
That is
All right.
correct.
If you start a policy today, a brand new policy, then you got to make that election right away.
Okay, that's how I understood it. Thank you.
Yeah. Here's another question. Can you explain what, if any, is the relationship between PIP and the assessment? Basically, the MCA, the Michigan Catastrophic Claims Assessment, covers, helps to pay for the unlimited portion of claims. All right. So let's say somebody is 20 years old, is injured in an accident, and now will be covered, let's say for the next 60 years. Okay. Has to have constant care and or has to have frequent rehabilitation during that. So in the next 60 years, that's a lot of money. And the assessment is $100 per year for those people who have selected the unlimited. It's zero if you don't select that option or if you opt out. So basically the relationship is that it's just sort of an extra pool that helps pay for your unlimited coverage.
So in a nutshell, this is how that pool works, is that your insurance company pays up to a certain amount. Say you have State Farm, you know, Jake is your carrier. And so they will pay up to a certain amount. And then if you had a catastrophic injury, then your claim is going to go into this pool of insurance companies, and they just pull your name out of a hat, and then that insurance company is going to be responsible for carrying the ball forward down the road.
Right.
So if you reach a maximum point, State Farm will only pay a maximum point, and then this pool of insurance companies is going to take the ball and run to the end zone.
Right. It's $580,000 is how much your insurance company would be responsible for. So Jake would have to pay $580,000, and after that is exhausted, then this pool of money from the MCCA will be covered. Okay, here's another question. What can you do? Can you cancel your policy now and then get a new one now to reduce your costs? Let me give you my standard answer. The insureds are in the driver's seat for most insurance companies, okay? You can cancel your insurance at any time, okay? Whether it be car insurance, homeowner's insurance, life insurance, health insurance, any kind of insurance, you can cancel it at any time. Whether you are able to get a new policy in the short run is a different question. Some of these have limitations. What I would do is contact your agent, contact VantagePointe Risk Management, tell them what you have, and see if a new policy would be the best bet for you, and then make a decision at that point. I would never advise anybody to cancel any type of insurance policy right this minute because they think they're going to get a lower rate. It generally doesn't happen that way. So let's say that you cancel your policy today and you think I'm going to get a new one tomorrow. You might forget or you might not.
It sounds like that was suggested by their agent, so it sounds like it would work for them.
I think what he meant, and again, I think what they're saying is that check what the new rates would be, okay? And then if it's better, then you always can do it that way, okay? Just canceling a policy and not getting a new one is never a good idea. You may be able to work with your agent and get a reduced rate with whatever company, you know, whether it be Jake with State Farm. But let's say you're with Jake with State Farm and you call your agent and they decide that, what's that stupid, oh, that Limu Emu, okay, is the cheaper way to go. You could do it that way. But I would say that, you know, just on the idea that you want to cancel your policy now because you think you're going to get a cheaper rate may not be. Get quotes and find out what it's going to be.
Yeah, and make sure on that note, I mean, it's like if you're going to jump off the building, make sure you have the net there to catch you, right? You just don't want to jump off the building without looking first to see if the net's there.
Mm-hmm.
I think Bob and Sharon had a question.
If you're a passenger in an accident, does it matter if they have zero or low coverage? And you're injured, how are you going to be compensated for that injury?
You as the passenger,
Yes.
you as the passenger will be covered by your own policy first.
Okay.
And then after your policy, it will go after the BI policy.
Their bodily injury policy, correct?
Yes, correct.
Yep.
And so if they don't have a bodily injury policy,
Then you would have to,
You're going to be out of luck.
yeah,
I mean,
you have to sue. You're out of luck.
yeah, if you can't make a claim, and that's why it's so important that you consider giving up this unlimited benefit. All right, because if you give it up and then you're forced to look for money to compensate yourself or compensate the injured person, it could be a chore. I mean, there could be nothing out there. All right, so you've just taken to save a few dollars, you've taken the easy way out, and now it's coming back to bite you. So that's where you have to weigh what is the best plan for you. For the peace of mind. I mean, I understand the dollar and the pocketbook, but you got to find out where your peace of mind is, where your head is in saving it, for that good night's sleep.
If you have unlimited now, and then you go to a reduced rate one, and then you get in an accident, can the insurance company prevent you from getting the no fault, getting the unlimited?
Well, wait, there's two different things. No fault is everybody has no fault, okay? If you change your mind and you reduce, okay, so let's say that somebody says, I'm going to change my policy as of August 1st, and I'm going to go to $250,000 rather unlimited, okay?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
you get into an accident on August 1st at 12:01 a.m., you have only $250,000 worth of coverage. You
Right.
can't go back and get that $1 million or that unlimited that you had 1 minute before.
No,
That's
what
right.
I'm saying is the next time around when I'm getting,
Oh, yes. You can, and the next time around, you can always look at it.
so the insurance company wouldn't prevent you because you've been in multiple accidents.
No,
They may not insure you.
yeah, you may
what
pay a
I'm
higher
saying.
premium.
Right,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying, okay.
I will tell you that in the state of Michigan, many auto insurance policies are written on a 6-month basis, meaning, and so there's something that you could look at there. But again, I do not know of any responsible agent, and I know people from a multitude of companies that are recommending people reduce it because it's just like you said, it's a chance that you're taking on your own health. So again, remember, PIP is you and your spouse, you and your children. Okay, you want to have the best for yourself, the best for your spouse, the best for your children. Don't limit it.
Greg, if they have their assets, I see another question. If I have all my assets in a trust, what can they get from me if I'm in an accident?
Well, they can't get any, well, it depends on what trust, but if you're in the protection trust, then so you've built the fence around the hen house, okay? So money judgment creditor cannot get access to the hen house. The money judgment creditor is the fox, all right? By that protection trust, you've kept the fox out of the hen house. Anything that's not in the hen house, that's fair game. Okay.
So it's
I don't know.
almost also like a cookie jar, anything you can get at, they can get at.
Absolutely. And you cannot,
Julie.
this is another issue, or comment on that, is that if you know somebody has a money judgment against you, and all of a sudden you dump everything into a protection trust, that is not going to work, okay? Because that's what is referred to as a fraudulent conveyance. You know somebody's coming after you. They have a judgment, and you try to essentially shelter your stuff in a protection trust. An attorney is going to eat through that like like warm butter. It's a fraudulent conveyance. You're trying to move stuff away knowing that somebody's coming after you. So you have to think about the stuff before, it hits the fan.
I think Greg, you had an analogy when we were talking yesterday about an old car and tires.
Yeah, well, so my analogy is this. So when I was at Discount Tire, there was this guy that was in front of me. He had a beater of a car, and he looked like he just had rolled off the curb, all right? And he went up to the counter, and he told the salesperson, I want to buy the best tires possible because this is what I use to transport my family and my wife, all right? My wife drives my car. We use this as a family car. I want the best tires on it. So it goes to what I started out. Don't be the Dutch that I am, okay? You have to protect yourself and you have to protect your family. And if that means buying the best tires for your beater car, that's what you got to do, all right? If you buy the cheap tires, the first snowfall, where are you going to go? You're going to the ditch. So I guess that was my analogy. You got to buy the best tires for the car.
And I would just like to reiterate that we don't sell insurance, so this is.
Yeah. No, we leave that to the professionals.
Right. Well, does anyone have any, oh, there's another one on there. Do you see that, Lou?
Yeah, that was a nice statement from someone who said that they did renew it and they stayed with unlimited PIP, and his premium did go down so much because of the change in the assessment, and that he felt he made the good choice. So good, I'm glad. The whole purpose of this was just to educate you. The more that you know, the more that you can make a good decision for your family. And that's the overall goal, that VantagePointe has, and I know especially that Carrier Law has. What is the best decision for your family? How can you protect your family? And that's what our goal was today.
And so I thank you all for coming. I'm going to send the deck, Lou's deck, and also the recording out to everyone who attended today. So I thank you very much and have a nice weekend.